think everyone feels it. Every mom, every dad, every professional person, we all feel this frenetic busyness. What is the danger?
That's what God wants to heal.
Guys, this is so my life right now, and it's killing me.
A lot of times we believe we have to earn rest.
Sonia, I lost it all. I was mad. I said this to God, like, fine, cool. You take that away from me, then I'm working.
So if I ran into you in the street and asked you, how are you doing? Would you say, really busy? I've been really busy. Or have you said to someone else recently, like, I'm just feeling exhausted? I think then you would be like most Americans right now. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's why this conversation is so important. We're going to be talking about the rhythm of life and Sabbath. And joining me here today is Jason Mitchell and Joanna Wishard. And today we're talking about this like busy culture and life that we kind of have going on. I think everyone feels it. Every mom, every dad, every professional person, you know, like we all kind of feel this frenetic busyness that goes on. And it's like a badge of honor we wear. I actually learned some really interesting stats just recently, just two. One was there was a study done. 60% of American adults say that they are actually too busy to enjoy life. And that actually goes up. If you're a parent of kids under the age of 18, 75% of parents polled said that they are often too busy to actually enjoy the life that they have.
Yeah, been there. I felt that.
So I was like,
That makes me sad, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
but I think I've been there.
Yeah.
And I think some of it is because we're not listening to God about this concept of rest and this concept of Sabbath and rhythm and pace. So heads up, this is not going to be a shame episode. We're not telling you to dump all your schedule. We're not telling you that you should suddenly, you know, leave off on a vacation. We're just saying we're going to have a conversation about what God says about our need for rhythm and rest. And how can we actually give that to ourselves and our families and our communities right now, not in the future, not when the kids are grown up, right now. So, but the first question I have is, why do you feel like we are so busy as a culture? And why do you feel like this is such a moniker that we wear that everyone can relate to when someone asks you, how you doing? Really busy.
Yeah, I think that's because busy and doing equals success in some way. And so we all want to be successful. And so sometimes I think, like you had just said, like that badge of honor around, I'm so busy. Well, that must mean I'm important, or that must mean I have a lot going on, or I have a full life. Look at all of the things that I have. And so whether we actually believe that that's why we're doing that, I think there is this cultural or subconscious, like if I don't appear busy or if I don't have a lot going on, like, am I super lame? Am I not successful? Do I not have anything to do?
All right, so here's a hot take. Do we say that in podcast world, or is that the sports world? Hot take? Yeah. Here's a hot take.
We do now.
All right. I don't think we are busier. And I'll nuance this here in a second. I don't think we're busier. I think majority of people have a ton of discretionary time. And I think we are more hurried than ever before. And I think there's a difference between the two. Busier is literally what fills your calendar. I think a lot of people are spending a ton of time doing nothing during the day, or scrolling, or watching Netflix, or all that kind of stuff. And so we're more hurried because we got more things we're filling our time with. We're just going to the next thing. I'm not sure we're technically and truly more busy than we ever have been. That's my.
Yeah.
But I think we feel more hurried than
Summarize
ever.
that for me in a sentence. The difference between hurried.
Hurried is a state of mind. Hurried is a presence. You're hurried in your presence, always thinking about the next thing. Always you're watching Netflix, but thinking about the report you got due tomorrow. You're always you feel the weight that there's always something else to be doing.
Yeah.
Even though you might be doing you're taking your kids to practice, but you're thinking about you got to get to dinner. You're making dinner, but all you're thinking about is you just can't wait to sit down. You're sitting down and you're like, I've got to whatever, So it's just always it's a little bit more of a presence.
Or a lack of presence, or a lack of settledness, I think is another word. It's funny. So I kind of agree with you, but I do think.
Disagree. Come on.
I think we are busy. And I don't mean that to say like busier than ever before.
Right.
I just also think we um there could be a real sense of lack of boundaries. And so then I think even with that, then we do fill our schedules and we do all the things. We think that we can, and it's like we can, but should we? And so some of that too is I really do think we are busier.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think that there's
But
more
I agree that
opportunities.
there's a hurriedness that then the busier you are, also the more hurried, the lack of boundaries. I do think all of that culminates into the lack of ability to be present where you are, the lack of ability to have a clear thought in the conversation you're in right now versus the conversation you think you have to have 2 hours from now. And then, like, because a lot of times, even I see it a lot in parenting, they call it like the mental load. And so, like, even the
Mhm.
mental load then a parent carries, where it's like, well, where are my kids right now? Who's picking up my kids from school today?
Mhm.
I wonder if they're going to have homework. Then, if they have homework, then, well, we have to get to soccer practice. So, how am I going to do soccer practice and get their homework done? So, then I think the busyness on top of life, on top of the lack of presence, I think all of that contributes to a little bit of like what you're getting at.
I think that is so relevant, Joanna, and because I see that in my wife.
Yeah.
Because myself, the two kids, we don't think about a lot of the function of the family, but she does, and it's because of how she's equipped, and you know how my brain just drips things out the minute I hear them. Um, but she sometimes just looks exhausted, and it is what she has to manage and maintain.
Yeah.
And I know that can be guys, gals,
Yep,
students.
totally.
A lot of times we have young people. We have high school students that have 15 things that are required of them,
Yep.
whilst they're supposed to be planning for their imminent future,
Mhm.
and it's like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
The solution is not to get rid of activities in your life. It might be. That's just a surface solution. Like some
Mhm.
people might, that's triage. So
Yep.
some people may need to truly go to the emergency room and clear some schedule stuff.
Mhm.
But you can do that and still be hurried. That's my kind of
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You can clear your schedule and do nothing. So you're like,
Yep.
I'm not busy, and you still feel hurried because because that's what God wants to heal. And that's what we'll talk about. On the other side, I know some people who are incredibly busy and they're not hurried.
Totally.
They're good. And they're the busiest people you'll meet.
Mhm.
And Jesus, even when you think about this for a second, Jesus was very busy. He was going from town. I mean, like when you just read the Gospels and you see how much he traveled from town to town, you see how many dozens and dozens of people he healed. People were lining up to heal him, or sorry, to be healed. You have all this, and yet there's a non-hurried presence about him.
Mhm.
One time he's busy. He's actually walking to another town. I think this is in Luke chapter 7, I think. He's walking to another town. So he's busy. He's on a road trip. He's on a business trip, right? He couldn't catch a flight, so he's walking. But it's same thing. A funeral, he sees a funeral procession coming out. A widow who had already lost her husband had just lost her son. So this woman is going to be destitute. It says that he was moved with compassion and stopped what he was doing. That's a non-hurried presence.
Mhm.
Busy, but he's not hurried. So he's able to respond in the moment. And so my point is, I just don't want someone who's high, kind of a driven person to hear this be like, well, you mean I got to just knock out? No, because you can clear your calendar and still be hurried. This is about the presence. This is about what God wants to do in our hearts about. And again, some people may need to triage the busyness. You literally just stop running around so much. That could be the case. And maybe we should talk through how to determine that. But
Yeah.
but I don't think that's the only answer.
Well, let's actually address what the causes of this is. So like so let's take it a step further. What are the causes of this frenetic, hurried life? What would in your lives create that hurried feeling?
So a couple of things that have led to hurry in my life. An unhealthy sense that my value is tied up in what I do and produce.
Mhm.
That's led to hurry. So if I have an unhealthy sense that who I am, my value in life is dependent on what I do, what does that mean I'm going to do? I'm going to do more. I'm going to try to succeed. So I mean, like, so that's driven it in my life at times. Sometimes a fear of my kids missing out, or a fear that my kids are going to be behind, or a fear that it's so now all of a sudden I'm saying yes to things, and but it's really rooted in my own sense of fear. Those two things come to mind right away. identity and fear that drives it. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say probably at the triage level, like I just know sometimes I'm terrible at time management.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and that might like sound trivial, but sometimes I just really don't fully give myself all of the right
A lack of
time,
discipline.
right, to do
Yeah.
the things that I know I need to do. Like I am a chronic like crammer. So it's like, oh yeah, totally. We can fit that in, or I can do that. Or I mean, it just happened. I was trying to get to a thing at the kids' school. Um, and I had even buffered, like, we're gonna make like it's gonna be great. I'm gonna be there on time. I'm gonna be able to set up. I'm gonna be able to be fully present. Um, and like sometimes it's just like, nope, I had to step in and do that, or I chose to step in and do that. And so sometimes I think at the triage or like the highest level for me, it can just be time management. Um, and then I think the intentional side of me, like it is am I the only one that can do this? Or am I choosing to do this because I think um, like even some of that pride or, like there's no one else that could possibly do this. I have to be the one to step
Mhm.
in. It's like, well, no, that's dumb. Like you probably don't have to be. There are some things that's true for, but not everything.
Mhm.
And so then it's like the pile just keeps getting bigger and bigger and you don't sometimes it happens and you don't realize it. And then you are finding yourself in a spot where it's like, hey, actually now I do need to triage and like pull off the layers.
You know what it is for me is like I resonate with everything you guys said, but for me, I think it has more to do with my spiritual connectivity. I
Mm.
view it a lot like a cell phone. So I got my cell phone here in my hand. Um, I can use that cell phone and I can deplete it to zero. But if I plug that cell phone in, I can use it for days and it's
Mhm.
not going to die. And for me, when I feel it, when I'm hurried, not busy, because I'm
Mhm.
busy a lot,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but when I'm frantic and hurried and stressed and bitey, I can almost always check and go, I'm unplugged.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
good. Like I had someone say, you know how you'll be like, someone says, "How are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm so busy." I had someone say, "Hey, I stopped saying that." And what I say is I'm full. Like it's a full day or I'm having a full week or whatever. And then I was in like a book study a couple years ago and someone used that analogy because I was like, "Oh, I like that." Like that's a different connotation of like busy versus full. And then that person said, "Yeah, but what are you full of?"
Mhm.
And so, like, that's a little bit at what you're getting at
Yeah,
is like, am I full of the right things? And
totally.
like, that's sometimes a heart check I need to do for myself where it's like, I'm actually not full of good things, or I'm not full of like being, connected to the spirit, and
Yeah.
so then that like causes a bunch of things to get out of whack in your mental space.
And it's what Jason said originally. When I'm most hurried and I'm unplugged, that's also the time where I lose 2 hours, on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Where
Mhm.
then it's compounding.
yeah,
Yep.
And then it's like that's a vicious cycle. Because then you feel more behind because
totally.
you just didn't have the energy to. And I get it, man. I've vegged out. I've done
Mhm.
it, so I understand that. But it's
You
just
get on YouTube and you're watching like the algorithm will give you more of what you want. And I think that for me, if I'm not careful, that can lead to damaging effects in my
Mm.
life, in my heart and soul.
Mhm.
And so my question is, why should people pay attention? Like, what is the danger? Like, because life is busy and hurried, and there'll be time to rest later.
Mhm.
But why should people pay attention to what we're talking about? What is the danger of ignoring the flashing yellow light on your instrument panel that's saying, "Hey, this is too much."
Mhm.
I mean, a couple of things come to mind. Um, when we live in a continual, perpetual state of hurry, the relationships with people who matter most suffer.
Mhm.
Our mental health and emotional and physical health most likely deteriorates. And spiritually, we lose a sense of connection to God. I mean, like I would probably summarize it in those terms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all sorts of research. All you got to do is do a real quick Google search, and you'll find, the effects of stress,
Mhm.
right? Like time, busyness, stress on your mental health.
Yep.
Um, it's interesting. I heard something the other day. Someone here on staff was telling me that she just read a study that said one of the number one correlations now between kids who are growing up anxious and stressed is hurry. is when you hurry them with time.
Mhm.
Like that's one of the number one sort of feeders.
Mhm.
So, so in other words, if you're always like, come on, we need to go.
Mm.
We need to go. Get your shoes on. We got to go. And it was so challenging when she told me that, because literally that morning, Solomon, my 6-year-old, who, I'm kind of trying to get him out the door every day, he was like, I got to hurry, right?
Yeah.
He told me that because I'm always
Right, yeah.
saying, Solomon,
Going.
let's go. Let's
Okay.
go. Let's go.
Yeah. It's
I
that-
almost
it's-
That's a
yeah.
contributor to anxiety.
Yeah.
Guys, I
It's-
literally like this is so my life right now, and it's killing me. Like wow. For me, okay, so this is let me just paint it when I'm at my worst. Okay, so I'm just gonna lay it out there, guys. Don't judge me. Okay, so I go into a hurried season. I'm really busy, and that leads to more hurried. I unplug. I don't get plugged in the way I should.
Mm.
I watch, YouTube videos till
Yep.
12:30 at night. I oversleep. I don't work out. I wake up, and it's like starts the day hurried.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm racing the kids off to school hurried.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then I'm getting into work hurried. And everything is hurried because it's a cycle, is my point.
Yeah.
Is like, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people maybe feel like that is that cycle of hurried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you start the one domino, it's like it leads to the other and to the other.
Mhm.
The other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
very much relate to that. And you guys have both talked about, Joanna, you were talking about calendar. You were talking about kind of the calendar a moment ago as well. That probably is a discipline. Actually, you could say, okay, not having calendar discipline is a contributor. I would just go maybe one step underneath that, which is the seasons in my life that I felt most. I've just lost, or I've lacked a vision for what do I want to be most important in our home? What do I want to value the
Yeah.
most or prioritize the most in our home? And then build my calendar around that,
Mhm.
as opposed to letting my count. So I'm just speaking for myself. That's when
Mhm.
I know seasons in my life I've gotten out of sorts a little bit.
Yeah.
Is I'm not, I don't feel like I have agency over
Mhm.
my calendar, over what people want, whatever. Or now I start to say yes to opportunities and things to feed my own sense of
Mhm.
inadequacies, or
Yep.
I don't want to let them down, or whatever. I mean, that's happened too. And all of a sudden now you're stacked up and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I can't get a break.
Yep.
But my point is, we have way more agency over all of this than we tend to think.
Mhm.
So I'm in control. No one's in control of my calendar except me.
Yeah.
So not going into the remedy yet, but just to say, Jason, was there a time in your life as a pastor? We look at you and we see that it appears that you're very busy and you could get into that hurried. What did that look like for you? What were the warning signs, the lights that you were like, uh-oh?
I've been in multiple seasons like that where it's just empty. Everything's empty. And so, especially when I was in my 20s and early 30s in particular, there was a lot of trying to prove myself. And that'll lead you down the hurry spiral real quick, because it's never enough. And you're always, again, I'm saying yes to a bunch of
Mhm.
things that like I should be saying no to, but I have no vision for, I had no vision for like the priorities of my life. And because of
Yep.
that, if you don't know what you've said yes to, it's very hard to say no to a bunch of things.
Mhm.
So that just it kept stacking and kept stacking and kept stacking until eventually it's like, for me, I'm like, I got nothing. I got
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah.
You know what? Imagine some of the people listening right now feel depleted, just feel empty. And you're doing it and you're going through the motions,
Mhm.
but you've got nothing.
I think for me, one of mine is when I've spent time with people but have not been with them.
And what does
Yeah.
that look like?
I think when I go throughout a day and I spend time with 50 people,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't
Tell you anything about those interactions?
feeltually.
Yeah.
There
Mhm.
was like, that's when I know I'm not present, which is what you brought up about Jesus is
Yeah.
I'm not present where it's like, I just miss my kids. It's like I had a couple hours with my kids today,
Yeah.
but I was on my phone, I was doing other things, and it was like not present.
Mhm.
And for me, that's a flashing light where it's like, did I have anything meaningful with anyone?
Yeah.
My coworkers, my wife, my kids, like was there anything
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't just frenetic going to the next thing? That's for
Mhm.
me a warning sign where it's like I feel lonely.
Yeah.
And I was surrounded by people all day because I was just, it was tasks and doing things and conversation for with, you know, conversation to accomplish something.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Like go clean your room, get ready for school tomorrow, those kind of things, instead of being like, how was your day? And just like living, in a moment with the kids. So that's,
Mhm.
I like that word accomplishment because that actually is that resonates with me is the seasons that I felt most depleted. I'm usually thinking about everything's through the filter of accomplishment.
Mhm.
How does this help me
Yeah.
accomplish the thing that I want to get accomplished? And that accomplishment can just be I need to get my kid down for bed.
Mhm.
It's like, okay. And if it doesn't help with that, it's not a so
Which
again
is a
it's
feat, getting your
it's totally
kids
a
for
feat.
bed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you miss because you're hurried,
Yeah.
you miss the woman's funeral thing walking out. You miss the opportunity because you're hurried. See, this is you don't have to clear your schedule. You can find the pockets in your busyness, your stuff you're doing to to connect and
Yeah.
and breathe purpose into some
Mhm.
of those things.
so now let's change gears here for a second, because let's talk about this, how God addresses. So, Jason, like, could you explain to us, like, the word Sabbath? It's such a churchy word. Like, it is the answer to some of this Sabbath.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably explain what Sabbath is, but let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
All of this, the I think what we just need to say at the end of the day, all of this hurriedness is having an effect. So when I'm hurried putting Solomon down to bed, that's a great example, by the way. I'm there, but I'm where I'm really wanting to be is the next place, and everyone feels that.
Mhm.
It will affect the relationships with the people that are most meaningful to you.
Mhm.
It will affect your emotional and mental health, and it will deplete your soul. This is the effects of it, right?
Mhm.
So I just want to. This is the urgency, and so it's interesting in the Bible that God, I don't think, desires any of that for us. He wants us to have a full and rich life. He wants our relationships to be full, and He wants our mental and emotional health to be. He designed us to be living healthy.
Mhm.
So all that to say, you mentioned the word Sabbath. Sabbath, that's a principle. It's actually found in the Ten Commandments. It's actually, if you go back to the beginning of the scriptures, Genesis chapter 2 is where it's the first time that you see it. And it's modeled for us in Genesis chapter 2, where God creates, all things. And on the seventh day, so you've got this order to creation. And on the seventh day, which would have been the pinnacle or the sort of the climax of creation,
Mhm.
um, God creates, it says that God rested. So that's um, becomes a precedent in a lot of ways for 6 days
Mhm.
rest, 6 days rest. In the when God was freed the people from the Hebrew people then had been enslaved for 400 years to Egypt. God frees them. If you read about this in the book of Exodus, God frees them out of slavery and takes them on a journey for 40 years through the wilderness to get them the promised land. And in that journey for 40 years is basically retraining them how to be human again because
Mhm.
all they had known is how to be a slave. And so one of the ways he wants to retrain them is he's like, so here's 10 starting points.
Mhm.
Don't kill each other. Don't cheat on each other. Don't lie to each. He's like, I need to teach you how to be human.
Mhm.
Um, and
And he
he
did that as a gift to them,
100%. They
not
had
a
lost
set
their
of rules
humanity.
to them.
They had
Yeah.
lost their humanity.
Mhm.
Um, but one of them in the middle of it is on the seventh day. He says, honor the Sabbath day, so which is a day of rest.
Mhm.
And he goes actually into that one. Most of them are do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal. They're like dun 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 dun.
Mhm.
With the Sabbath one, it's the fourth commandment. It's actually so much. It's like a whole paragraph
Mhm.
because I think he knows. It's so funny. It's almost like he knows you'll get the murder thing. You'll kind of intuitively understand that. Like, that's not in your best interest or humanity's. You'll probably understand the whole adultery thing. Like, if you've ever had that happen,
Yeah,
like,
don't steal because your neighbor's going to shoot you. You know,
yeah. It's like Sabbath. He's like, you're going to want to get around this one,
Mhm.
and you're going to think this is completely irrelevant. So he says, honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And he's like, on this day, do not do any work, nor have your camels or donkeys do work. He's like, because I know what you're going to do. You'll be like, well, I'm not doing work. Let's saddle up the horses. Let's make them do work.
Mhm.
So nor anyone in your household.
And isn't some of that also because of what they had just endured then 40 years before?
Yeah.
I mean, he brought them out as slaves. All they knew was work.
That's all they knew.
And that's not what he wanted for us.
A slave's value is 100% tied to output. That's your whole, like, if you have no output as a slave, you're useless. So think about living with that mindset, that is your predominant mindset. My worth is determined on how much I can do.
Do you think we still live with that mindset?
Well, I'll just let that hang for our listeners. I'll let them determine whether or not they think that. I absolutely do. And so God's like, I need you to know that your worth and value is found in being created in my image. And so here's a way to discipline. When I say discipline, I don't mean punish. I mean discipline as in create structure. Here's a way to do that. Take a break. Because if you refuse to work on the day, you will be forced to realize it's not all on me. The world does not revolve on my energy.
So, but if God gave this as a gift, can we opt out of it? Because it's like,
Well, it's interesting because that was one of the 10 commandments. So but what's funny to me, is Sabbath is the only commandment today that we actually take pride in breaking. It's actually like we're proud of it. We want to tell people, I haven't had a break. I haven't had a break in a month. I haven't had a break.
You don't hear that from
No.
I love, you don't hear people being like, I love murdering.
Yeah.
I just love murdering. It's like you don't hear
that.
that.
Believe what I stole from Target last week. You know what I mean? Like no one brags.
There's shame with all the others.
Yep. That one though, we actually don't mind it and feel like we're off the hook for that one. And so it's just an interesting sort of observation. But I think it's one, again, all of those commandments that were given ultimately for our good. Like you said a moment ago.
Yeah.
They're to make us human.
Totally. And we don't have to earn them. So like even in that Exodus passage, the folks that he was introducing those 10 to, he also wasn't telling them that they had to earn them. And so I think a lot of times we believe we have to earn rest. And even in the creation story.
Oh, yeah, we have to justify.
Right.
Oh, I've
Adam
totally
and
been
Eve
there.
were created on day 6.
Yeah.
And then the first day they got to experience was rest.
Huh, that's cool. Yeah.
Not,
Oh,
well,
that's
then tomorrow we have to get up and start
wow.
working
I've
again.
never put that together. That's good.
And so it's like they got to wake up and enjoy.
The first thing they experienced was rest.
Yeah, because work. So there's a book, The Deeply Formed Life, covers a handful of topics, but Sabbath and rest is one of the ones. His name is Rich Velotis. Covers, I think, really well and in different ways that I've heard before. And so work is good.
Yes.
But sin entered and distorted work, just like any other aspect, right? And so I do think some of that too is even in Exodus, like work had become distorted through the way that it was accomplished. And God was saying, hey, I am chasing you unconditionally. Here is a set of how to human, essentially, again. And if you guys don't realize that the slave work or the experience you guys are coming out of was wrong, let me tell you it was wrong and give you a new way to think about that. And it's to rest on like Sabbath. And so I am someone who loves to work.
Same.
And so I think like that is such a balanced perspective to keep me, to remind me like, hey, Joanna, like you're not earning this. Like
that is so good.
And I think it's good to remember that. And I need to be reminded I don't need to earn my Sabbath.
Yeah.
And Monday is going to happen, or you know what I mean? Like whatever day you sat, like the next day is going to come and I'm going to have to pick it all back up again. But God is saying, hey, you're not resting. Like you don't need to take a break from working because I need you to stop working. Like I need you to rest in me And I will continue to
Mm.
sustain all of the things I'm asking you to jump back into the next day,
Yeah,
which is a
that's
trust
really good.
issue also. Like there's a trust issue that comes with some of that too.
I've visited when we were younger. We'd go down, and visit family again, and when you go visit family, they got their life going on.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, so you're kind of stepping in, but you have nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting around all day. They're out mowing the grass. And then when they come in, you feel like you like stand up real quick.
Yes, I
And you're
know that
like,
feeling.
Yeah. That's that thing. It's like, I
Yeah.
can't, that's not good to rest. Like,
Right.
I'm not allowed to do that. I
Totally.
need to justify why I
Yep.
was sitting here.
Yep, absolutely.
That's why, perhaps that's why a lot of people say things like really busy and stuff. They are justifying their place in life.
Yep,
Is
Yeah.
like, I'm doing it well.
totally.
But what we're hearing from this entire conversation is it's the exact opposite of what God says is doing it well.
Yep.
We say lifing well, adulting well is
Mhm.
being very busy and filling your calendar really well.
Yeah.
Not resting, that's laziness.
Mhm.
But God is saying, rhythm, rest,
Well,
breaks.
yes. Let's camp out on that rhythm, because
Yeah.
it's not living well. Might be filling your calendar with good and productive work.
Mhm.
We were made to work,
Mhm.
and the Genesis 1. This is before sin entered the picture. God
Mhm.
said, "Be fruitful and multiply,
Mhm.
and tend the earth, like
Yeah,
steward it." You were
co-laborers. Yep.
co-laborers.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
created for. Well, I think it's
Yeah.
important to point out for our people.
That's great.
This
Yeah.
is not sit around. But then he says, and then take a day and put your doing down. Like take a
Mhm.
Love
day
that.
and basically, are you going to trust me that
Yep.
I can do more with your 6 than you can do with your 7? That's at the end
Right.
of the day what
Mhm.
Sabbath forces. It is an act of worship. It's to go, God, I trust you with my 6 that you can do more with it than I can do with those 7.
Mhm.
With my, doing it on my own with 7. And that's a surrender. That especially on weeks where whatever. Now, we should talk about what does that mean? You just sitting around on a day of rest?
Yeah, let's talk
Are you
about
just sitting around, or you're doing it? I don't think you are at all. In fact, you might be busy on your Sabbath.
Mhm.
But what are you busy with? You're busy with the things that replenish you. You're busy with the things that aren't work.
Mhm.
You're setting your work aside.
Mhm.
But I might be full that day of coffees with friends.
Mhm.
Great.
Yep.
It's about replenishing. It's about God saying, cool, you're putting aside the 6 days that you've been doing work, and you're able to do something that fuels you now,
Mhm.
that finishes you up, that fills you up.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How important is a God piece in when we start to structure Sabbath? Because like if I could get filled up with lots of I could get filled up by going to the movies. I could get filled up, but like rest wise, what's the difference between rest
Well,
and
There's
replenishment?
a different, yeah, okay, that's a great word, and sort of nuance. I think rest is and needed too, by the way, sometimes. Sometimes rest is literally just physically needed. Sometimes
Mhm.
rest is I need to just not think about the things I've thought about for 6 days. There is an element of rest is like I just put that down. Replenishment, I would describe as the things that you leave doing the thing, you leave more inspired, a little bit more creative,
Mm.
a little bit more joyful, a little bit more encouraged. Um, it's it's the things that what would the words for that be? They leave you feeling. I keep saying filled up. I
Mhm.
don't know another way of
I
saying
think
it.
inspired is a really good one. It's funny. So my own team here at the church, they know when I'm coming back from vacation because I have a bunch of new ideas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so some of that, I mean, it's like a blessing and a curse for them, right? But I do think it is some of that where it's like I was able to step back in more clear headed. So whether that's like your week of like a week of vacation off
Mhm.
or that regular rhythm weekly to say, yeah, actually, I am going to recapture white space. I am going to get my thoughts to be clearer. I am going to let go of some of that hurried and find that like presence.
Mhm.
What I think is interesting is speaking about rhythm, though, you can't hope that day 7 like fuels all the rest of the other 6 days. And so I, like you just mentioned, like you still have to find rest, even like daily, right? It's also not
Oh, yeah,
saying
yeah.
that you can, that only on day 7 do you find replenishment. And so it's interesting, I've found in leading up to either a time of rest or a rhythm of rest, right? Kevin will call me on it if he sees me running ragged to get to that moment of rest,
Mhm.
instead of also figuring out that it's a rhythm that then when you're resting, you're not replenishing from 0.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think too, like that can just be really challenging because then we also think that Sabbath is going to be the thing that like fixes the week.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
also not
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
And so I do think that rhythm is helpful, especially like when you're thinking about that, whether it's like that 7-day like turnover, um, to have that day where you're also not going into Sabbath completely at 0, because then you just like have so much more to like build back from. But when you find that rhythm builds the you're not starting at your tank empty all the time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that that can be challenging when we go into moments like that where we feel like you're actually so depleted that it's not restful.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I think people ought to ask, what would bring me joy? That's really probably your question you should ask if you're going to take a day to
Mhm.
set aside is what would bring me joy?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the work stuff, the normal work that I do 6 days a week. Now, what would bring me joy?
Mhm.
I bet you a lot of people would struggle even answering that question. We don't even think like that a lot of times.
Yep.
And yet
Yeah.
God
It's
wants to.
viewed as selfish
Yeah.
to think like that. What would bring you joy? I do think but is there a difference between what is the God piece in this? Because certainly you could play golf
Mhm.
every Saturday for the next year and watch yourself grow hurried or more and more hurried without plugging in.
Yeah. I mean, unless golf. Yeah. I mean, so the God piece, I don't, what do you mean by that?
I mean, there's got to be a component. There's got to be a component of Sabbath where it is reconnecting with God. But I guess what you're probably going to get at is like you should be doing that every
I
day.
feel like, yeah, exactly. I feel
Yeah.
like that hopefully is a response. Sabbath would be a response to, and it is in itself an act of worship.
But even maybe my question is the wrong question because if you think about it, even my question is, we can't possibly just have a day for us. It's God expects something like a toll.
Right.
I
Well,
think
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean. I think there's
Yeah.
a
I
problem with
can't
the
play golf until I read my Bible.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my point.
yeah. I
Like,
got to
there's a
pay
problem
my
with
dues first.
there's a problem with the premise
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of my question.
Yeah, no, but it's a good question. I think that the very nature of it is so counterintuitive and countercultural. It is in itself an act of worship.
Mm.
I think you guys know a little bit of my story with this. I'm very passionate about this because I went years without prioritizing taking a day off. I would get it every now and then, and
Mhm.
I'd make sure I got it. But when, especially on weekends that I'm speaking at church, we have Saturday gatherings, we have Sunday gatherings, and so um, I just Saturday's a full work day. So like it's when in the weekends that I'm speaking.
Mhm.
So I never really had a day where that happened. And when a couple of years ago, when my teaching rotation, the amount of times I was teaching went way up, that I just knew this is not sustainable. I could do that 10 times, and it wasn't even good then, but I'm just saying I could do it 10, 12 times a year. I can't do it 30 something times a year.
Mhm.
I can't do that. So I made a very deliberate decision, and it was a deliberate, like it was not going to happen by accident.
Mhm.
I had to know, again, you got to know what your values and priorities are. And it was an act of worship. And I decided I will not work on Friday. Now, I'll do things, but I'm not going to work on church stuff. I'm
Mhm.
not going to work on my sermon. I'm not going to work on responding to emails, fires that need it. They're going to have to burn for a day because it was an act of saying, God, I'm going to trust you
Mhm.
that you could, with this message, because it doesn't feel done, but you can do more with this sermon in 6 days than I can do with it in 7.
Mhm.
That, I'm telling you, has grown my faith and trust about as much as anything I've done.
Mhm.
And I seriously mean that.
Mhm.
Maybe other than tithing and giving money, because that's hard too sometimes.
Yep.
But it's an act of worship, and I've seen God give that back to me in multiple different kinds of ways.
Mhm.
And I've been doing this for 2 years now. Like, I made a pretty significant shift, and he has given me back. He's just given me back in so many ways.
And what happened the first Friday
The
that
very
you
first time I decided I was going, like, I am not working on Friday. I made an act, and I just decided, and it was like, it wasn't like, okay, give me a month to plan this
Right.
out. Nope. It's like, this Friday I
Yeah.
won't. This is like on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's like, I
And
won't do
didn't
it.
a friend of yours challenge you with that?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it
A
was
friend
like,
of mine
wait,
who
what's stopping
he
you from
leads a
doing it
very
tomorrow?
large organization, and he was like, here's the key to my success. He was like, I started actually taking this seriously,
Mhm.
taking of
Wow.
trusting that God could do more with my 6 than I could do with my 7. And and I told him, oh yeah, that's right, because I told him, I was like, thanks. At the end of the conversation, I was like, hey, thanks so much for sharing some of that with me. I'm going to really work on this. And he's like, nope, you're not going to work on it.
Yeah. You're going
I
to
was
do
like,
it.
yeah. He's like, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I remember I was like, and I barely knew him. I
That's
was like,
so hard.
who? What?
Yeah.
But that actually was
Or like
exactly what I
challenging.
needed to hear,
Yeah.
because I was like, you're right. If I work on it, it'll be a year from now when I'm still working on it, quote
Yep.
unquote. So yeah, this Friday I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do work. So I decided that, and it was Thursday afternoon. So now all the things that like in a sermon or message I would have been working on Friday,
Mm.
I had to get done by Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening, sometimes Thursday midnight, but Thursday afternoon, right? And I'm sitting there, blah, 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 blah. It's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, I'm almost done. This is by the way, it's amazing how much more productive you get, because you don't have flex.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get things done.
Yeah.
You get way more productive. Anyways, so I was like, okay. And I'm telling you, I lost it all. I don't know. It's never happened to me before. It hasn't happened since. It happened on that first week I decided I'm going to trust God with this one day a week. And the sermon was gone. It just deleted. It was like gone. Everything that I had worked on.
Wow.
So I was mad. And I was ticked. I was mad. And I went on a long walk in the fields, and I was like, fine, God. I said this to God. I was like talking out loud, praying, because I was out in the cornfield. No one can hear me except the deer or whatever. And I was like, fine, I'm working tomorrow. Like, fine, cool. You take that away from me, you let that, then I'm working. It just sounds so stupid now, but and then by the time I was done with the walk, I was like, all right, God, I will still trust you with. I'm not going to work on it tomorrow, but I need you very badly right now to
Mm-hmm.
essentially everything that I'd written down, bring it back to memory now, and
Mm-hmm.
just expedite the creative process and
Yeah.
all that. And I got it done.
Which,
that evening.
I mean, is awesome. So John 15, this stuck out to me as I was kind of preparing for this conversation. It says, remain in me and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. And so much of that Sabbath posture, like, is the trust to remain
Yeah.
in God and in his power and in what he wants for your life and what he has in store for you beyond. And like, I love, like, I think other translations even use the word like abide. Like, I
Mhm.
love that discipline of like remain. There's like nothing hurried about that.
Mhm.
And there's like a settledness. And so, like, I love even in that moment in your story, like, you had to decide, God, I'm going to remain. I am
Yeah.
going to trust. I know you. I know your character. And like, we're in this together. Like, I just love those moments where it just like, God wants to be in our Sabbath
It's
too.
relationship. Yes.
And he's
yes.
not saying like, you go figure out Sabbath like on your own. He's
Yeah.
saying, no, like, this is a gift
Yeah.
and like, let's enjoy it together. And so I think back to your question, even around like, what's the God component of that? It's like, I think some of those days for me are like the moments where God is like continuing to light things in me, even that it's like, hey, take a moment to like, this is how I've wired you. Lean into that. Enjoy like just
Yeah.
gifts also beyond just like having Sabbath, right? And I don't know. I just love thinking about like God being in your Sabbath, not you're having your Sabbath for God,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
Mm-hmm.
Well, didn't Jesus say that, like you reminded us, like the Sabbath was made for humans?
Yes.
Like it was
Yes.
made for humans. And I loved what you said. At one point, you said like that the taking of Sabbath is an act of worship.
Yes.
It's how we say that God, I don't have to understand why I need this. I don't have to understand that you know better than I do. That you know how to human well, and you say that this is critical.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's been 2 years since I made that very deliberate decision. It's not any easier today than it was 2 years ago. Pretty much every Thursday, I'm not done with whatever it is I need to be done with 1,000 things, every week.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, because we're recording this on a Thursday, tomorrow, I'm anxious about it tomorrow. Because I know this week there's been a lot of personal stuff and there's been a lot of extra work stuff.
Mhm.
And that's kind of thrown me out of the rhythm, just a normal weekly rhythm. And I feel anxious. But it doesn't matter.
But
Like
you're
tomorrow,
saying, God,
it's an act of worship.
I'm giving you this 6
I'm
days.
giving you my 6, and I'm trusting that you can do more with that than I can if I work tomorrow.
Mhm.
So what would I do on my my days where I'm not working? What I don't do is I don't work on church stuff, and so that means I'm not checking emails, I'm not responding. By the way, if I ever do that, one little note, it's because Saturday I'm not preaching probably, and that Saturday I'm going to do
Were you just
something.
making sure we knew that?
I'm probably making sure you knew that and all of our staff. If I ever
I'm
respond,
kind of like,
Yeah.
because last Friday, actually, I think I was responding. You were
Mhm.
sending some stuff and responding, and it's because Saturday I
Mhm.
wasn't preaching last
Don't
week.
worry,
and so
I'm good.
I'm just saying. I feel like I need to clarify that. Anyways, I'll do that. Jenny and I will always get time together, so we almost every Friday we go out for breakfast. It's relationship. Football season, I'm doing football games. Again, your life doesn't stop.
Mhm.
I'm not doing the work. I just want to. It's free. It's for you.
Mhm.
okay,
It's for you.
but
It's
I
for
wanna-
your replenishment.
I want to highlight something, and I want to ask you to clarify why it's important. What's wrong with just sending a couple texts? What's wrong with just checking your email 2 or 3 times?
Well, I don't know. Wrong. I think because I don't think that's the spirit of what God's trying. God's trying to break us from. It's not on you. And if I were to respond to some of those things, I'm still like, oh, they need me.
Mhm.
It's on me, and I don't know how to answer that other than I know myself. And if I go and respond to one email, it'll be 3 within an hour. And then that'll lead to 5 texts. It just never stop. It doesn't stop. The work will be there. Like it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think about it maybe as right or wrong as much as I think about it. Like I want to honor the spirit of it, which is take a break from the work because it's not all on me. I trust God can do more in my 6. So, and I just want to stress that it's given to us as a gift. It is for us. So why would I want to mess with it?
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. It's like a gift.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do something fun that I didn't tell you guys about. I want to give you a scenario. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios of people whose life doesn't fit well within taking a normal
Break.
Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is a college student that's working her way through college. This girl is taking lots of classes because she's trying to finish up early.
Good for you. Good.
Like, you know what I mean? Like she's
You need to come work for us. That's a high achiever.
Yeah.
I like this.
But this means that she is always working. She's always working either at her job to help pay for college, or working on papers, or working on reading or studying, or even the sport that she does for her scholarship. So what do you say to that person? What's Sabbath look like for her?
Mhm.
Well, a couple of different ways of going about that. So I'm going to be a stickler. So here's what I'd say.
Yeah.
I would challenge her, and remember, I would say, hey, I don't think this is a law. I think this is a gift. So I'd
Mhm.
remind, because Jesus said
Yep.
God didn't make man for the Sabbath. He made Sabbath for man. This is a gift. And when he says man, he means mankind. So everyone. So I would say, let's just assume that Jesus is right, which we believe he is. And so don't think about this as a law, as a have to. Think about this as he's giving it to you as a gift.
Yeah, I get to.
What would stop you we believe that God was giving you, what would stop you from trying to find a way to live by the principle that he can do more in your 6 than you can do in your 7? Money, probably. The feeling like I'm going to get behind. So let's bring those before God
Mhm.
and let God maybe trust God with those.
Mhm.
So if Sunday is, I would just challenge it and say, why don't you try at least? Take God up on this offer and see if you can't make a Sunday or a Saturday.
Mhm.
It's like, well, I got to work.
Or Tuesday.
It doesn't matter today.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to think about maybe the least
Yep.
from a school standpoint because
Yep.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of going with the persona there. But because I know you don't have classes on Saturday or Sunday. So you've got to do work Monday through Friday if you're,
Mhm.
well, I guess you can rearrange your classes. But my
Mhm.
point is, I mean, you guys understand the point.
Yeah.
I would probably challenge and say,
Mhm.
let me help you try to find a way to find a 24-hour period where you're not doing
Mhm.
your normal work.
Yeah.
So, and you are really saying go for 24.
Yeah.
You're not saying like 2.
Again, this is a gift to us. So I'm not going to be legalistic about it. It's not a law.
Mhm.
So it's not like 23, 22, 20, or like 3, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Now we can work. It's like, now you're missing the spirit of it. That was what
Yeah.
the Pharisees were doing. That's why Jesus was like, because the Pharisees were like, well, can I turn on my light switch? And he's like, what are y'all even talking about?
Yeah, because if I
Yeah.
turn on the light switch, someone else has to work. The electrician has to work, or whatever.
Yeah. And
know.
Jesus is like, y'all are missing the point. This was a gift. Why are you
Yeah.
trying to dissect it like it's a doggone, like it's a legal clause?
Mhm.
So all that to say, but I do think the principle is 6 on, 1 off. So
Yeah.
but I mean, I would challenge that. The Jews would go sunset to sunset. So theirs started because their days start when the sun goes down, like on a Friday, let's say.
Mhm.
Saturday starts at sundown till sundown the next day. So theirs was it's like what 24 hours, I don't know. Find that noon to noon, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
but I would try to I'm just trying to say stick with the principle.
Yeah.
I would challenge.
I love that. All right. So I'm eager to hear you guys' thoughts on this one. So I want you to imagine a parent that has several kids, and the kids have a lot of needs, and so there isn't a day off from being a parent with these kids.
Mhm.
Nope.
And it is a lot of work, and maybe there's even some disciplinary things, maybe there's some unique medical needs, but this person's a caregiver, and there is no day off. So what do you say to this person that's like, that's all well and good, that's great,
Mhm.
but my kids will wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever, and I am mom, and I can't take a day off of being mom. I can't take a day off
No.
of being dad.
I don't think Sabbath at all is
Yeah.
speaking to the value of or the context of relationships.
Mhm.
No, like I said, I'm going to football games on Friday. It's not like I'm like, because why? Because Silas is playing. Like I'm not.
But my point is, like,
I-
this mom is, or this dad is saying, like, the work
Mhm.
doesn't stop.
The work of parenting.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome to real life. Like no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not what I
But
don't think.
but that's what's preventing them from getting Sabbath.
Yeah,
Or-
I would say that that's really hard because I also
Sorry, you're a
think
little
that,
bit more.
well,
That was a better response.
I would just say that's really hard because I also know there are families that there's no one that lives near for support, right? So like it would be easy to be like, oh my gosh, can't you just find someone that can help you with your kids? There are families that they have children with very specific needs that like the average Joe or your neighbor or your friend like may truly not be able to comprehend like and help with. And so I think that that's incredibly difficult. And actually, even like caregiver, right? I think that there are even adults that have those scenarios with aging parents and like other things. Um, I would say actually a little bit of what you just said a moment ago in the other scenario. This might sound super trivial, but pray about it because I have to imagine that God can help figure it out and show ways where it doesn't feel like there is a way. And all I mean by that is sometimes I know about myself, I don't make my prayers specific enough. And so is it, God, show me who can come alongside of me and help? God, show me or renew me to see it a different way tomorrow where, hey, God, I'm trusting that your spirit is in our house and you're going to continue to nudge me and show me ways that I can figure this out. I think a lot of times, it's funny you said you were such a stickler about like the 24 hours or, like the day. I also think God honors figuring out things in the margins. And so you may not be able to start with a clear path to a full day. But I think we'd say even with living generously and trying to get to tithe, yes, you could absolutely wake up one day and be like, hey, today I'm giving 10%. But I also think God honors, hey, God, I don't know how to do this. Today I'm giving you 1%. And I think that some of that is the posture and the heart and the God sees our efforts. He's not expecting us. I don't want that to sound works based, but he sees our efforts in trying to get closer to him. And so I also believe that as you're figuring out how to get closer to God through rest or Sabbath or honoring him in that, he's also working to get closer to you. And so I'd have to imagine that God would
Good.
honor the effort
Yeah.
in whatever that might look like. And so it might be an hour where it's like, how do I find time to step away for an hour?
Yeah.
And I agree, but all I'm going to say with that is, so that's how I live my life for a long time. And so perfect example. Well, when I get a couple weeks vacation, so I'll just work for 5 months straight.
Yep.
That'll make up, let's see, 24 hours. How many weeks is that? Okay, so that kind of counts, right? It's not what God said. God said 6 days. I want you to take a break. I want you to take a day to break. And again, not a law. It's not going to keep you out of heaven. It's not going to like he's going to be like, but it's for our good. And you can try to store up all your vacation. So it's not the principle of Sabbath is not store up your vacation days and then work for 4 months and then store up your vacation days, take a week, and that makes up for it. Your soul will go empty. Like, so it is pretty clear in the Bible that it's 6 on, 1 off, 6 on, 1 off. I think that can look at it a lot of different ways. I mean, like, but I don't think I would encourage everybody, don't try to play. That's playing the game a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if I do 2 hours, can I get 24 hours spread out over 7 days? Somehow, like, that's a little bit of like Jesus. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's legalism a little bit. Like, well, then just make it a decision and go after it. Is he disappointed? No, I don't think. That's not what we're getting at. Again, it's like if I'm a good dad and I'm offering my kids something and they don't want to take it, it's like, are they not my kid anymore? No. But man, I had something really good for them. So I would just challenge, get literal on this one is my point and see where it leads you. And if you're like, oh, I promise you're not going to be like, boy, God let me down on that one.
I think there's something valuable in highlighting what Joanna said. I think you have a real heart. I think you
Sorry, Jason.
I would agree.
Yeah. I think Joanna just grabbed she almost probably has a name in her mind of someone who doesn't have family close, that, doesn't have the ability. And I don't know why, but I felt this idea that it's really about doing Sabbath with your kids. Instead of on that day, it's not about those kids are not your employer. They're yours. They're entrusted by God. And so instead of doing Sabbath around them, in spite of them, do it with them and teach them. So like we do different things on this day. Because guess what? They can't go away.
Right.
They can't go away. But instead of doing everything we always do, we go to the library.
Do different things. I love that.
On Sunday. We take walks on Sunday. We visit a friend on Sunday, even if it's a kid with unique needs, or it's like we do different things because God is replenishing us on this day.
What would bring us joy?
Yeah.
Because the other 6 days we just got to do these things.
We got to get stuff done.
We got to get these things done. Yeah, that's I said it probably more harshly than you guys have, but that's what I was trying to say. Like, I don't get to not be a husband to Jenny on Fridays or a dad. Like, no, the relationships, that's not work. That's what I was trying to say. That's not work in the context of Sabbath. That's called being a dad and a husband, and that's a God-given calling on my life. So it's about I love how you just framed that. I actually think that's the key, is just saying, what would bring us joy? what would we do different than the other? Because the other 6 days we got to do those things.
Yep.
And it might
Mhm.
mean you got to go do stuff, but it's different kind of quote unquote
Mhm.
work.
And I also think in the scenario you described a little bit too, there are probably other pieces at play that you're potentially not getting rest on the other 6 days either.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
so
true.
we've all lived in seasons too, where it's like, how could I possibly take one day? I don't even feel like I'm finding moments of just rest in the other 6. And so I can't imagine a scenario where I'm the primary caretaker for my children and they have high needs that I am not also being refilled. And so to think about getting a whole day where I'm going back from 0, like that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like you have to be able to um you
Mhm.
can't wake up every day with an empty cup and also
Yes,
expect
yes.
day 7 to like go back to full and
Agreed.
jump back into the next
Yeah.
day. And so some of that is that rhythms of renewal. Even I've heard
Mhm.
it like where it's like you can't pour out of an empty cup. So
Mhm.
every day you got to figure out how
Yeah.
that cup gets fuller.
Yep.
Um
And
because
that's
yeah,
not
like
selfish.
right.
That's not selfish to
You-
take care of yourself.
No.
Yes.
And we need to rid ourselves of that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Last scenario I'm going to give you is
But actually, really quick on that. So
Please.
where I get like hot takey is some of that too also isn't an excuse to be like, oh, well, I can't go to capacity because like I just need to rest and take care of myself.
Oh yeah.
And so
yeah.
that's probably some of where my hot take comes in because I also think we really warp the idea of self-care
Yes.
um,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
in
agreed.
not helpful ways either.
Oh, sure. I want you to imagine a guy that has worked really hard to earn his position. Like he's worked really, really hard to earn his position. Maybe he's a professional in law. Maybe he's a professional in a business. He is expected to always be on. To not be on, to take a day and not respond to things means he's gonna lose his job. Like,
Mhm.
why didn't you get to that? Why didn't you respond to that? What do you say to that person that's in that kind of scenario? That's like, sorry, if my boss texts me on Sunday and I got to deal with 3 things, I'm gonna have to do it.
Mhm.
What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say I've worked that job. So before I worked at LCBC, I think I've said here, like I worked in retail. And one of the organizations I worked for, I only made it a year because of that exact reason. Um, I mean, this sounds really, I guess, potentially extreme, but I mean, I just found a company who was more in alignment with the values that I had. And so actually I didn't leave retail even at that point. I just shifted into a place where it was more in an alignment with the type of environment I wanted to be a part of. And I mean, for a year, it was awful. Like
Mhm.
it was all the things you just described. You're getting texted, someone didn't show up, you got to go in. If you don't go in, the store is not open. If the store's not open, you're getting written up.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
yeah, I very much like there are places like that, and that's really difficult. And I also know that there's a responsibility to likely be caring for your family and making sure that you're able to provide in all the ways that like you need to, right? I really had to trust God with that one. Um, and it was a season. I didn't flip. Like it wasn't like, one day it was like that and one day I left, but I knew that wasn't sustainable for me.
Mhm.
Um, and so I needed to also be a part of an environment that was in alignment with some of the values I wanted to have for our life, which actually takes us back to us a little bit of what you've been sharing too, Jason, right? Where it's like you have to prioritize and decide what is important
Mhm.
for the life that you want to have and the values you want to have. And then how do you move closer to that and trust that God, and actually the job that I went to next, it was awesome. And I loved working for that company. I loved being a part of that environment.
It's
And so having to
LCBC.
trust. It wasn't. I said it was a different company.
No, the one
Wow.
you love.
Yeah.
It was that one. I love this one too. But I'm just saying it
I'm
wasn't
just
just to jump from there to here.
I would say you can gain the whole. Jesus said you can gain the whole world and lose your soul. That's what I would say.
Did you just pull that up?
So
Yes.
You were ready?
there you go.
That's
Come on.
that's exactly wow. Yeah, come
Those
on.
are Jesus's words. That's Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. And
Yeah, I memorized it too.
I've looked at the script. I looked at your phone just there. So I would again, do you trust Jesus or not? That's the bottom line. And I'm not trying to be all kind of up in your grill with that one. But I would just say, look, do you trust that his way is better or not? And if his way is better, then he will take care of you. That's the bottom line. He will take care of you.
Yeah, well,
And if you don't trust that, you will try to take matters into your own hands, and you'll convince yourselves that if I don't, it won't. If I don't, it won't happen. If I don't, it won't work. If I don't, whatever. And that, I'm just saying, you can do that way. You can live that way. Your soul eventually, you will become tired. You'll just become tired. And Jesus will be like, okay, now you're ready.
Mhm.
You ready to trust me? So yeah, it would probably stink, and it might mean you lose. It might mean you have to. Joanna, you just went through that, and look what God's done. He
Mhm.
will provide for you. Anytime we trust Him, He will always honor that.
yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
He will always give us. He will always honor faithfulness and
Mhm.
obedience. Always.
I do think that there is this. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest that how many times does that text actually need to be responded to? I think a lot of times we put ourselves in the situation where we think it is life or death, but in actuality, we've just never had the courage to have the honest conversation.
Yeah.
Mm.
Of saying like, "Hey, I need this. I need space. I want to be the best employee, the best performer for you, but I can't do this." I'm not saying sometimes that your boss might be irrational and you do need to have a very serious conversation with your family and going like, this is what life might look like if I don't make this and I
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
Yep.
But I also you'll get a different dad, or mom. But I do think sometimes
Like, because they'll have the margin to be different and present, not because you're actually getting a different mom or a different dad.
5-year-old
Exactly.
freaks out.
Exactly.
Different dad.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was good clarification.
Yeah.
But but I do think sometimes we're guilty of not having the tough conversation and then go back to because we like to feel important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we don't entrust to other people to make that decision. We think we have to make it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like Jason, if you were a micromanager, Fridays never work
Yeah.
because you're our boss. You make decisions. If you were like, no, I got to be the one to turn the key,
Yeah.
then you don't get Fridays because
Yeah.
we need you to see everything we're doing on
Mhm.
Fridays.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the so what I'd love to do is just kind of close with a heartfelt. What do you to the people that are listening that joined the conversation but they never got to contribute? What's a heartfelt word that you would give to everyone listening to encourage them to take this seriously, to move forward, and to to restore Sabbath into their life at some way, shape, or form?
Mm.
So, what would you guys say to that? You can take a moment.
I would remind. There's a real famous psalm, Psalm 23. It's a psalm that even if you're not really a Christian, you may have heard before. And it starts by just saying, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me." Some translations say, "He makes me um, rest in green meadows or green pastures. He leads me beside peaceful streams." What I would say is everything that God has for us, all of His instructions are for our ultimate thriving and um, fullness of life. How He created us to be, step into who He, even if they're hard and even if they're challenging.
Yep.
With this one, what I love about this imagery here, the Lord is my shepherd. I have everything. He makes me rest. There will be times if we don't take Him up on some of the things that He said, He will make us like. I mean, how many people have had stress that's led to
Mhm.
all sorts of health ailments? How many people have lost relationships because they didn't even know their kid? They never took time to. And He's like, again, you can gain the world, you lose your soul. I'm going to, this is the way the world works.
Mm.
So my heartfelt thing would be find a way to trust God on this one and see what He provides on the other side. I think that it will not get easier. It might not have been 2 years for me since I really made a decision about this, and it hasn't gotten easier. But I'm telling you now, I wouldn't trade anything for the world. I wouldn't change it for the world now
Wow.
because I've seen um, how much more God can do. My soul, I'm not empty.
Mm.
That's what I'd say. I'm not empty. And I've had more happen these last 2 years probably than any other season of my life. And I don't feel empty. And I think that's because I've seen that God can be trusted with my 6 more than I can be with my 7. And I would encourage you, just take the jump, make the leap on that.
Love
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I personally am very challenged by what Jason just said.
Wow.
So I think
That's a
that's-
good conversation
yeah.
when that happens.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I'd echo everything you said, Jace. I do think that we have to trust
Mhm.
that God knows best and that He's right. God is always right, and He says, "You need this, have to have it. You can't function as a human, and you'll have the quality of your life will be worse without it." But because He's so loving, He says you get to choose, which is incredibly loving God. But He also says, "I am right." So, and I think we need to honor that. So, and I would say that's everyone listening. So my question would be, are you ready to trust God? Are you ready to give Him that 7th day? Are you ready to trust that He can do more with 6 than you can ever do with 7? So if you like this episode of the Live Change podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and as always, now that your life changed by Christ, live that change out.